Okay, inside your newspaper, you have two pieces of metal. One of them is thin and one of them is thick. Put the thick metal aside. That's for your final project, okay? We're gonna use the thinner metal today. Keep your newspaper folded nice and thick because we need a soft surface to be able to carve on top of. So I just open it up like that and keep it pretty thick. I'm gonna set that aside. Some of your metal is two-sided. So you can decide that the front is gold or silver. Some of you just have copper, but make sure that you're using the thinner metal. So the edges are really, really sharp. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna use a ruler and fold the edges over. And I'm gonna show you how to do that really carefully. So just on your table, take your ruler and line it up with the edge. And then overlap like 1/2 inch, like that. So here, I'll show you and then I'll give you time to try it. See how I'm overlapped about 1/2 inch? I try to make sure that it's nice and straight. I'm gonna use that to fold the edge of my metal over in a nice and straight line, and then I'm gonna push it down with my fingers. Be really careful when you do that so that you don't cut yourself on the metal. This creates a nice, smooth, safe edge. And I'm gonna do that to all 4 sides. So
I'll show you again. I put my ruler anywhere, it's about a little less than 1/2 inch is fine. Make sure it's as straight as I can get it. And then I use that ruler to fold the edge of the metal over, get rid of my ruler, and push down the fold. This is going to create a really nice, safe, soft edge on the metal. So go ahead and do that to your thin piece of metal. Trying to keep it as square as possible, and you'll just kind of have to eyeball it. This is why we're practicing. Elvis, do you have your stuff out? So want to try to keep it as square as you can.
So I did that on all 4 sides, and this is now the front. See how it's a nice square, still a rectangle? And my edges are really smooth, and they won't cut me anymore. I have a brush because the end of the brush is really great. I have a Sharpie because the cap is really great for this. A number 2 pencil, and any other surface that kind of is rounded and hard works great for this. Okay, so there's a couple tricks. This is just our practice. So we're gonna try a couple things, just abstract patterns so that you can practice. So what you do is I'm gonna go to the back and let's try just like a circle. I'm gonna really lightly carve a circle using my pencil. Now notice the newspaper's underneath because it's a soft surface. So what's happening, I'm just super, super lightly drawing a circle on the back. And then if you flip it over, do you see how it shows up on the front? Because it pushes into the newspaper and shows up on the front. So when I push on the back, the indentation shows up on the front. If I push on the front, draw another circle inside that one. And this is why we practice, because at first it's going to feel really awkward drawing on top of this. When I push on the front, the indentation shows up on the back. So let's try drawing another shape from the front. Maybe just like a simple square. Just so you get used to drawing on this. So if I draw on the front of my metal, do you see how it shows up on the back? So I'm gonna take the back of my brush. This is what we're doing today, by the way. See how it's pattern? I'm gonna show you how to do all of this. And it does feel really awkward at first, which is why we're practicing. So take the back of a brush or a Sharpie, and what you're gonna do, I'm gonna use the Sharpie. I'm just gonna use the tip of the Sharpie, and I'm going to carefully, on my circle, start pushing in these little round motions inside my circle. And I'm going to go in the other direction too. And what's going to happen is, do you see when I lift this up, see how it pushes into the back? So this is carving in. So you can get rid of the carving lines by going in multiple directions. And basically you want to use something that's soft, that's rounded and smooth, like the back of a Sharpie or something. For the square, I'm gonna push in from the back. If you just want to watch, I'll give you some time to work. I'm pushing in from the back, and you can kind of guess what's gonna happen. I go in multiple directions. You don't want to push super hard. And see how it pops out from the front. So I have two different ways to do this. I can push in from the front using just like the back of a Sharpie, or I can push from the back the same way. So you get two different ways of working with this.
Okay, let me show you a couple of cool things to try. Remember how the square pushed out on the front? You guys look up for just a second. One thing you can do is I can go back over it, over the edge with my pencil, and it really cleans it up. The other thing I can do is, you know how the circle pushed in? Watch what I do. I go from the front, and I outline, are your eyes up on the screen? I outline the circle really slowly and carefully, and it just kind of pops the circle out more. This is why we're practicing, because you kind of have to get the feel for it. I can, with the tip of my pencil, add little patterns inside my shapes from the front or the back. So watch what I do to the square. I'm going to add, you kind of got to press hard and make sure you're on a thick slab of newspaper so that it's not a hard table. It won't work if it's on a hard table. And you're going to got to work slowly. See what happens when I push in a pattern on the back of the square? It shows up on the front of my square. And now I have this cool texture. I want you to practice drawing on your practice piece. And sometimes, yes, your pencil's going to break. Drawing on your practice piece and trying out a bunch of different patterns and textures and just kind of getting the hang of this. Go pushing in and out from the back. So you should be drawing on the front and the back and seeing what happens. So for the next 30 minutes, I want you guys to practice different patterns, practice different designs. Here's a leaf that I did on the back and pushed out. I did the second leaf on the front and pushed in, so you can see the difference. So you are welcome to follow along with me, or you can try your own designs. Weird, but I like to take my finger and go like this, and it kind of smooths out. You want to try not to push through the metal though. It will push through if you're not careful. So the advice that I have is to work really slowly and carefully, especially when you're drawing. Try a bunch of different shapes. Try drawing from the front and the back. Try adding pattern onto the shapes and see what it looks like and see what happens. It takes some practice, which is why I didn't want you guys to try this for the first time on your final piece of metal. You'll figure out what works and what doesn't work as you try it out. Okay, so I haven't seen you trying to push in any of these with the bigger piece. So you start with a shape, and you take something that's rounded and thicker, and you slowly start to push in multiple directions until it's nice and smooth. You see how it pushes a whole shape, and then what you can do is take your pencil and outline it on the other side, and it makes it stand out a little bit. That looks so cool. Yeah. So try a couple different shapes like that. You'll find that the slower you go, the nicer it looks. And it ends up being, at first it's kind of frustrating because it's very awkward, but it ends up being kind of satisfying. I think outlining the shapes after you push them out really helps kind of make them stand out. And I also think turning the metal as you draw helps you control your pencil a little bit better. And then every once in a while, I take just my finger and rub on the front to flatten out my piece of metal. So as you're practicing, get some ideas for what types of patterns you might want to include in your final design, how far you want it to push out or push in. Make sure you're working from both the front and the back. And see if you can fill in your entire piece of metal with different shapes and patterns. Definitely practice using the Sharpie to push in, because that definitely takes practice to get it smooth. How are we doing at home, you guys? I haven't heard from you guys much today. We good? Nobody's gonna talk to me today? I see how it is. I will say that when you first start, it feels super awkward and it's hard to do, but you do get used to it, and the more you add onto the metal, the better it looks, I think. I also really like to add little tiny patterns after I push in or out. I like to add patterns inside the shapes. But you can also do shallow patterns that are just lines around your shapes. I did accidentally cut through my metal. I pushed too hard. So this is your day to experiment and try to get the hang of this. I like adding a bunch of circles, tiny circles that are really close to each other. I think that makes a really cool pattern. You should try that somewhere. It kind of looks like that. Try that from the front and the back. Is everyone staying safe? Nobody's hurt yet? It can be really sharp. It's like a really bad paper cut though. Try putting shapes really close to each other, like every tiny little space that I have, I'm filling in. Just so you can get the hang of what happens when you put two shapes close to each other. And don't forget, you should be pushing in from the back and the front to get a variety of shapes that are carved in and shapes that are carved out. You can do a simple dot pattern by just using the tip of your brush and kind of stippling. Creates this cool texture. Definitely takes practice. But when you get the hang of it, it's really satisfying. This is not something you could just watch somebody do and then try it yourself and be really good at it. You'll get better the more you practice, which is why I want you to fill up your piece of metal with as many different things as you can. I think I'm almost full here.